Hello and good evening, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining me this Sunday evening. I decided because a few people asked about the Crusades to do a talk on the Crusades and cover a little bit of the Sharia, look at some of the history, try to create a bit of a chronology to show that this cannot be blamed on Christianity, that Christians attacked Muslims without provocation or cause. We need to look at the reason that Islam is responsible for this and why it was critically necessary, but then also look at the Sharia, because the Muslim jihads, the Muslim crusades, have never stopped. They're ongoing today. You see it in Europe, you see it in Africa, you see it in Asia, you see it in South America. You can see the Muslims trying to take over everywhere they go, because this is a political and religious directive. It's a requirement of Islam. Subjugation, domination of all other states that are not Muslim by Muslim is holy law. So welcome everyone. So RJ tweeted to, or at least tag Colonel Chris Wyatt. Tried to look him up just like 2 seconds ago. Not sure exactly who he is. Yeah, I know Raymond Ibrahim. I actually contacted him by email some time ago, but I mentioned the Sharia to him and he wasn't familiar with what it is. It seems that very few people are. I mean, they use the word, they throw the word Sharia around, meaning something that's written in the Quran, we think, or what the Quran says, but people are not aware that it's actually a fully fledged set of religious legal text, of theocratic legal text, that it's a competing legal corpus, just like any Western legal corpus. I've still got people who think they know a lot about Islam going, man, it's not in the Quran. I don't see the Quran verses there. I don't see the hadiths. Therefore, I don't see why this constantly be ignored. And that's from Christians who know the Quran. And yeah, look, seriously, you're an amateur. Go crawl back in your hole. Not wasting my time to those people. Yeah, let's see. So welcome, Villainous. Hanzo, welcome. Got to see you, liebe Lloyd. Thank you very much. Welcome, Dragon. And yeah, but if you all know Raymond Ibrahim, do reach out to him. I can try and email him again. And yeah, is anyone keen on Dobre Večer, Viola? Dobre Večer. So is anyone keen on coming up? I can drop the link in the chat if anyone's keen. And you're welcome to come up, ask questions. I generally would prefer that you turn on your camera so we can see who you are, so you're not anonymous. And yeah, it's something I'm willing to take a bit of a risk for. My fellow South African, yeah, dude for Christ, welcome. So yeah, my stuffy, my scratchy throat the other day turned into a full-blown cold. So forgive me if I have to blow my nose and cough and sneeze. But here we are. Okay, so let's bring up my screen and we'll take it from here. So the Crusades and the Sharia. So there's I will be jumping a little bit from set of notes to set of notes, but I did drop right in the beginning this set of notes. It's my OneNote database link. Just about everything that I have here, you can find in those notes. Look up the Crusades and much more besides. All right, but I will be showing you what that link leads to and what you can find there. Okay, welcome, Joel. Let me see. Yeah, Polish. Polish is really, really tough. I do try and speak it a little bit, but yeah, not the easiest language ever. Okay, so Chris Wyatt is retired US intelligence officer that covers politics, lots of experience in the African context. Cool stuff. Reach out to him, tell him about me, send me his details. I'll reach out to him. Dude, wish I could come up, but we debate Muslims almost every day. They want to see my face. Well, you are entitled then to turn off your camera if that's the case. I once reached out to a Muslim apologist who's got something like 75 videos on YouTube. Actually, an ex-Muslim apologist against Islam now. And I invited him up and he refused because he's got 75 videos on YouTube, but he said that he can't because he doesn't want to be discovered by Muslims. I'm like, because yeah, if they see his face. And I was like, I didn't say you need to turn on your camera. I said I would prefer that you turn on your camera, but if there's a risk, of course. I mean, in my case, I live in Poland, and it's a lot safer than most places, and amongst other things. But yeah, Okay, so that aside, Hungarian's even harder than Polish. Yeah, well, Eastern Europe is just, it's languages designed to mess with people. Okay, let's start. Okay, let's start off with a chronological list of territories within Christendom that were invaded by Muslim conquests before the First Crusade even happened. And this is a very short list. There is a much longer list with dozens of entries. So this is just to oh, welcome. Yeah, great. Codename Honey Badger. The Sharia work you did with Fan the Films, great. Yeah, and I did more with Al Fadi as well, and recently with Rebecca Barsef. And yeah, obviously on my channel too. But yeah, I hope those are enlightening to you. Okay, so the longer list has dozens, but this is just to give you an introduction. So Syria, right? Roughly these periods, these dates might be off by a year or two, depending on the source you look at. You're going to find a slightly different date. But Muslim forces conquered Damascus, Homs, Aleppo, and much of the Syrian region. So that's in 634. In the 630s, they also besiege Jerusalem, and Jerusalem eventually surrenders to Muslim forces in 638. They conquer Egypt in the late 630s and 640s, right? And that's one of the last strongholds of Byzantine control. Because I speak Afrikaans, I can understand Dutch fairly well, and I've been to Holland a couple of times, and so they can understand me. I can understand them because Dutch is fairly straight. If you speak Afrikaans, Dutch is not that difficult. Says, yeah, the risk is real. An online friend killed. Yeah, I've worked in security. People have tried to kill me. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. So let's see. Right. Then, of course, North Africa. Between 647 and 709, Muslim armies moved westward, capturing Carthage and completing the conquest of the Maghreb by 709. Remember, they went all across all of North Africa, right? Then Spain, right? So they eventually conquered Spain. So by 718, most of the Iberian Peninsula was under Muslim control, although resistance obviously persisted in the north. So now the question is, was this because Christians were invading Arabia? No. Was this because Christians were taking their shepherds' crooks and their priests and going over and beating up Muslims? No. It's because Muslims are inclined to make invasion and jihad. Then they invaded Sicily, like 827 to 902, and eventually the conquest of Sicily is completed. And eventually southern Italy, which they invaded for like 400 or 500 years. These people were in Italy. In fact, like the coastal areas, like within 100 kilometers of the coast of Italy, was bare of people because the pirates would come along, Muslim pirates, and just kidnap people. Right? So raids and temporary occupations by Muslim forces from Sicily extended into southern Italy, with places like Bari being controlled by Muslim emirates for periods. So these conquests significantly altered the religious and the political landscape of the time and of that region. Right? So the Crusades were launched in response to these events. Among others, you had factors like the Seljuk Turks with their first capture of Jerusalem in 1071, and then threats to the Byzantine territories because they were swallowing up all of Christendom. They'd swallowed up 75% of what was known as Christendom. So the Crusades were a counteroffensive to reclaim lands lost to Muslim rule and also to secure the pilgrimage routes to Jerusalem. All right, now there are false claims of Christian provocation for Islamic invasions, and these are historically inaccurate and logically inconsistent with what you can see is just a very basic representation of the timeline and nature of Islamic expansion. It was driven by religious doctrine, as we will see. You've got the rapid expansion of the Islamic Caliphate post Muhammad's death. So you see conquests of regions like Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and all of North Africa continuing into Spain by the late 600s, early 700s. With the Battle of Tours in 732 AD. So ask yourself, what were the Muslims? Maybe the Muslims can tell us, what were Muslim invaders, Muslim colonizers, Muslim settlers, right? These colonial slave trading settler jihadi Muslims doing in Spain in the 700s. So Charles Martel defeated the Umayyad forces and it prevents further Muslim incursion into Western Europe, showing that Muslim aggression was caused, not Christian provocation. So given today's borders, roughly 6 to 7 countries can be considered directly invaded by early Islamic conquest within 3 years of Muhammad's death. So Did these countries invade Arabia first? Because no one cared about Arabia. So let's see. Right, so let's have a look at Muqaddimah by Ibne Khaldun. So let me bring up something briefly. So Ibn Khaldun, now according to Princeton, if I just go to the Princeton website, is generally regarded as the greatest intellectual to ever have appeared in the Arab world, a genius who ranks as one of the world's great minds, right? And the Muqaddimah is the most important study of history ever produced in the Islamic world. So this man is regarded as a great intellectual, but also he is a very well-studied, extremely educated Muslim imam. And what he writes for us is very interesting. He says, in the Muslim community, the Muqaddimah, an introduction to history. In the Muslim community, the holy war. I read Quran, so I read Quran and eat kebab, and you can also go fuck yourself. The gates of Toledo were opened by, you see, Christians were murdering Jews. Christians were robbing Jews. Christians were ill-treating Jews. Christians were taking Jews' possessions. Christians were being very unchristian. Now this is a very common question. The gates of Toledo were opened by this. Now, so answer me, who opened the gates of the Spanish border? Who opened the gates of the French border? Did someone open the border, or did Muslims just decide to, who opened the gates of the ocean between Arabia and Spain? Who opened the gates to Sicily? Was there a gate, or did the Muslims just invade? You see, because you're trying to say, well, I've been to Toledo twice. Interesting place, really lovely place. Now, so what we have is we have Muslims invading everywhere as colonialist, violent, jihadi, rapists. And of course, everyone's going to try to say, well, the Jews are to blame. So yeah, if Christians weren't mistreating the Jews as much as they were in history, and there's a lot of history, a lot of blood in Christians' hands for mistreatment, then again, of course, there's lots of blood on Muslims' hands, even more so, much more so on Muslim hands. Yeah, but of course, Muslims would make little promises, and eventually they would turn around and just murder those Jews anyway, which is what they did. They eventually initiated some severe pogroms and murdered thousands of Jews. But yeah, who opened the gates of Egypt? Yeah, nobody except the Muslims invaded. So hence, I can genuinely tell you to absolutely positively go F yourself. So if you think you're smart, you're actually stupid. You're just trying to change the subject because you're trying to defend Islam, right? So yeah, but now so again, answer me, what were the Muslims doing in Spain? Did someone open the gates of Spain? What gates were there to Spain? What about the border across the water? Sicily, who invaded Italy? Did the Jews also open up Italy somehow? No, of course not. You're simply an idiot, right? Take it from me. So moving on. Yeah, MoMA opened the gates of hell. Exactly. So this is Ibn Khaldun, and he's a Muslim, for the same twat who said what he had to say earlier. What was this fool's name? Okay, well, okay, anyway, moving on. Great stuff. Welcome. First time here, begotten, not created. Very welcome. So, you know what? I read Quran and kebab. You're also an idiot. You see, you're also unfortunately an idiot. So I don't think there's any argument about that. But as I've said, you are obviously a defender of Islam. I know you're going to be claiming to be a Muslim, but the simple fact is you're actually just an apologist for Islam, lying to yourself and lying to others. So let me see. Yeah, I think we'll just send you packing because you are just simply lying to yourself and lying to others. So yeah, thank you very much, Dragon, for getting rid of that dumbass. So moving on. Right, the Buddhists received high honors. Now, the Christians had also received high honors, so maybe Christians are also just dhimmis all across the place. But anyway, no, I'm not taking prisoners because I do not assume that these people are acting in good faith. At no point have I been convinced that these people are acting in good faith. I haven't seen evidence that they're acting in good faith. I've seen evidence that they're malicious. I've seen evidence that they are acting out of hatred and are partisan on the side of Islam. That's all I see. When Christians quote Islamic propaganda, then I'm assuming for all intents and purposes, they are Muslims, no matter what they claim. So no, I don't take prisoners. I will, just be blunt about those things. So let me see. Okay, so this is what is written in the Muqaddimah. In the Muslim community, the holy war is a religious duty because of the universalism of the Muslim mission and the obligation to convert everybody to Islam, either by persuasion or by force. Persuasion is dawah and lying. Force is jihad, death. Therefore, caliphate and royal authority are united in Islam so that the person in charge can devote the available strength to both of them at the same time. He says here the other religious groups did not have a universal mission, and the holy war was not a religious duty to them, except only for the purposes of defense. It has thus come about that the person in charge of religious affairs in other religious groups is not concerned with the power politics at all. Among them, royal authority comes to those who have it by accident, and in some way, that has nothing to do with religion. So, it comes to them as the necessary result of group feeling, which by its very nature seeks to obtain royal authority. And as we have mentioned before, not because they are under obligation to gain power over other nations. So Muslims are under obligation to gain power over other nations. As is the case with Islam, they are merely required to establish their religion among their own people. So thank you, Ibne Khaldun. So yeah, maybe that fake Christian should take a few notes from Ibne Khaldun. Now, this is the man who invented modern history. This is him on the Tunisian dinar, right? From Reagan to Zuckerberg, the enduring relevance of a 14th century Arabic story. And great scholar. So let's have a look at the Muqaddimah on the Islamic war by sea. Ibn Khaldun, he is a great scholar of Islam. He is the man who created sociology. He's the man who's considered to have become the source of historiography. He is the greatest, one of the greatest. He's regarded as perhaps the greatest intellectual of Islam in history. He wrote a fantastic epic of history of Islam, a great Muslim scholar, etc., etc. So the royal and governmental authority of the Arabs became firmly established and powerful. The non-Arab nations became the servants of the Arabs and were under their control. That's known as being a dhimmi because they've invaded you, and a dhimmi in Islam is a prisoner of war. Every craftsman offered them his best services. They employed seagoing nations for their maritime needs. Their experience of the sea and navigation grew, and they turned out to be very expert. And the Muslims wished to wage the holy war by sea, jihad by sea, called piracy. They constructed ships and galleys and loaded the fleet with men and weapons. Then the Muslims embarked the army and fighters to fight against the unbelievers across the sea. What did those unbelievers do to them? Well, nothing, right? And why were they being invaded by these Muslims? Because they weren't Muslims. That's why. That's the only reason they had to do this. Of course, we know he'll throw all of this under the bus. Islam has to reject history, just like they did in Isaac, who wrote the biography. Yes, of course. Yep. So, now, this war and the unbelievers across the sea was the special concern of the provinces and border regions closest to the shores of the Mediterranean. And we shall see that this is directly a part of the Sharia that says you need to, transport the war, and the ones closest must carry it out, and then those further away should help come and assist with this jihad, this ongoing global jihad of the Muslims, right? So, and then of course they speak of the Mediterranean, Syria, Africa, the Maghrib, and Spain. So he's admitting, yes, the Muslims did so. Now, I don't think that the Jews opened the doors of the Maghrib. The Jews opened the doors of Spain. Toledo was a very tiny, tiny city. It's actually a really small city, right? It's not very big. So yeah, maybe the Jews opened the gates to Toledo, but who opened the gates to Spain? I can tell it's the Muslims. And of course, they're going to go, well, actually, we just hate Jews, so we want to blame Jews and the good Christians, and we don't want to blame the Muslims because that would be Islamophobic, but we need to kill all the Jews because liars. Okay, moving on. And then he speaks of Hassan ibn Nauman and Abd al-Malik, the governor of Africa, that a shipyard be set up in Tunis for the production of maritime implements of war, as he was desirous of waging the holy war. From there, the conquest of Sicily was achieved in the days of blah, blah, blah. Not the sea peoples. That's going way back to Egyptian times. That's going way back. Yeah, psychology is the study of a single idiot. Sociology is the study of a group of idiots. Yeah. So let's continue. Now, the main Islamic doctrine, the critical Islamic doctrine is called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. In other words, imposing the Sharia, right? What is right according to the Sharia, and preventing violations of the Sharia by Muslims and non-Muslims alike. So the obligation to command the right. And Allah says, let there be a group of you who call to good, commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. And these are the successful. That's Quran 3, 104. Now, this verse explains that commanding the right and forbidding the wrong are a communal rather than a personal obligation. It's jihad. It's a communal obligation. It's an obligation that falls upon the entire Muslim ummah, the entire Muslim community. If that small minority doesn't do this, Allah will curse and send to hell all of the Muslims. So a small group of Muslims must always strictly carry out these commands, do these things, or all of Islam falls into hell. Yep, the narcissists always play the victim. Let me see. Did I miss anything? Okay, so yeah, does anybody want to come up? Let me know if I missed anything, but let me see. So let me see. Okay, now, so yeah, there's quite a negative narrative around the Crusades, but then there's quite a negative narrative, about white people. There's quite a negative narrative about white history. There's quite a negative narrative around Europe, around Churchill, around World War II. We see a positive narrative around, oh, guys like the mustache man, that guy. You know, you see all of this kind of stuff because, yeah, well, Muslim propaganda and so on and so on and so on. Anti-Christian propaganda. Yeah, Soviet propaganda is still doing its thing today, right? So at some point, though, we need to push back against this. Now, it's simply a matter of will. It's simply a matter of those few people, like you, hopefully, who will learn the truth and speak the truth, will not give up. Just those few of you who are willing to speak the truth in the face of all of the lies, you can defeat the evil and the lie that is out there. Because the lie doesn't stand up to the truth for very long. So right. Okay, so this verse explains that commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, that this is from the Sharia, right? This is from the Sharia, are a communal obligation rather than a personal one. And if enough people do it, if enough Muslims do it, meaning that whenever a wrong is seen, one of those who see it corrects it, the responsibility is lifted from the rest. And those who perform it are expressly mentioned as the successful. So the Muslims who killed Nomika, welcome Donnie, thank you for your subscription. So those Muslims who murdered Salwan Nomika are seen as the successful. Murdering him is part of the Sharia. I've covered that extensively. It's not, I don't want to cover it again today. But what they did was perfectly lawful under the Sharia. They will receive reward for that. They cannot be condemned by the Muslims. What they did was right. And what someone did in criticizing the Quran is a crime punishable by death. And they killed him because that is the Islamic law. So, so they fully carried out the Sharia. Now, the obligatory character of jihad, just like lying in Islam, is obligatory. I've covered that in other episodes. You're welcome to look at my channel on obligatory lying in Islam. But jihad is a communal obligation. It's obligatory. So when enough people perform it to successfully accomplish it, it is no longer obligatory upon others. So as long as the extremists carry out jihad and kill people, do violent things, of course, then the other Muslims can wash their hands of it and say, well, it wasn't us. It was those extremists over there. But next time it might be the person washing his hands of the situation. But the Sharia does tell us that he who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. So, oopsie, I see I missed something. So let me just bring up. Oh, great. let me just move that there, and just start again. So, and it says here, if none of those concerned perform jihad, right? So if none of those concerned perform jihad, and it does not happen, then everyone who is aware that it is obligatory is guilty of sin. In fact, it's a crime, because non-commission of jihad in Islam, that's violent jihad, is committing a crime. If there was a possibility of having performed it, and they know about it, then what they did is sin. In the time of the Prophet, jihad was a communal obligation after his emigration to Medina. And as for subsequent times, there are two possible states in respect to non-Muslims. So non-Muslims in Islam live according to two separate conditions. Let's find out what those conditions are. Lloyd gets his own personal doorbell for donations. Yeah, he does. Thank you. But that was someone subscribing. True Islam is extreme, correct. All right. So let's continue. Now, the first of those conditions, right, of the two possible states in regards to non-Muslims, that's you if you're not a Muslim. The first is when they are in their own countries. Are you in your own country? Like, pick a country. In which case, jihad is a communal obligation. And this is what the author, the scholar, is speaking about when he says jihad is a communal obligation upon the Muslims each year. The caliph, or whoever's in charge, the imam, and if there's no imam, if there's no caliph, then it devolves upon the imam. If there's no imam, then it devolves upon the individual low-level Muslims. And they are to do jihad at least twice a year, minimum once a year, or they are going to lose legitimacy in the eyes of Allah. And the rest of the Muslim community will go to hell. So jihad's a communal obligation. They must attack and kill people. That's why you see all of these attacks on Christmas markets. That's communally driven jihad. So let's have a look at jihad. Now, if you go through the Sharia, in this case, the reliance of the traveler, the Umdat al-Salik, yes, Muslims that pay zakat are doing jihad. Yes, 15% of all zakat payments must go to supplying weapons or money or some kind of resources to jihad. Yes, you are sponsoring jihad if you pay any kind of halal money. Yes. Now, so if you look at the Sharia, you go to the index, the meaning of jihad, the scriptural basis for jihad. It is scriptural. The obligatory character of jihad. Jihad is a requirement in Islam. It is not an accident. It is literally obligatory. It's a communal obligation. It is even personally obligatory. Muslims can surrender when overrun, and then they can lie and say, well, it wasn't us. We were just defending ourselves. When it is obliged to fight in jihad, and who is obliged to fight in jihad? Those who are not permitted to fight, right? The objectives of jihad regarding Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians. Ooh, you see, the thing is that you have narcissists, you have totalitarians, and you have Muslims. Now, think about this. You wake up in the morning and you think about your day. So the difference, that's what free people do. The problem is with these totalitarians like Muslims who follow the Sharia, they wake up and they think about your day as well, and they don't like what you're going to do with your day. They don't like your plans for your day, and they want to fix that for you. So the rules of warfare and those unlawful to kill in jihad, except when it's lawful. So yes, it is unlawful, but it's also lawful when necessary. So whatever rules they give you, the opposite also applies when required. Yes, car ramming jihad. Okay, let me see if I've missed anything. Yes, just out of pure morals, just out of self-preservation, don't support Islamic businesses. Correct. Yeah. So let's continue. Now, jihad. Now, Muslims will give you, well, I've got my personal jihad, which is to eat more salads and more lettuce and like lose a kilo by next October. And that's nice. But jihad only has one legal definition, or one Sharia definition. And the legal definition of jihad as follows. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims. It is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. Now, this text that I have outlined here in gray, this is not in the original Arabic. This the translator of this book added himself. Now, so he writes here, and it is the lesser jihad. As for the greater jihad, it is spiritual warfare against the lower self, the nafs, or the soul, the conscience, which is why the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, said, as he was returning from jihad, we have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. In other words, how can you turn yourself into a psychopath? How can you overcome your prohibition, your psychological inhibition on wanting to kill or wanting to murder? Well, you have to fight against your soul. You have to fight against your conscience. You have to fight against your higher soul. So that is for them the greater jihad. The lesser jihad is just killing people. Now, lesser jihad, let's have a look at that. Lesser jihad. Let's have a look at the major hadith collections. In all 6 major hadith collections, Sahih Bukhari, Muslim Dawud, and so on, Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah, jihad always, almost always refers to the lesser outward physical jihad, that's killing, and not the greater inward struggle. So all of the numerous examples of jihad, if you look, I think in Sahih Bukhari, there's like, in his book of jihad, there's like hundreds of references to jihad, and it's all about killing, right? So as an example, there are nearly 200 references to jihad in the most trusted collection of hadith, Sahih Bukhari, and every single one assumes jihad is literal warfare. And by the way, before I forget, and I always do, if you like what I do speak plainly, I do speak honestly, I do speak what I hope is factually, with credible evidence provided, with resources available to that you can check. I show everything on the screen, so if you like, do share, do subscribe, tell your friends, pass this out on social media. People need to know the truth. The truth is powerful. So, right. I would agree. The problem is that we are not fighting back. Yeah, it's not that they are powerful. It's that we just haven't done anything yet. So let me see. So let me see. This continues. So the fabricated hadith. Now, there's a fabricated hadith about greater jihad. Does not appear in any of the famous hadith collections, and Muslims hate fabricated hadith and weak hadith, right? And is inconsistent with the teachings found in corroborated mutawatir, sahih hadith. Some of these hadith state that fighting jihad is second only to the belief in Muhammad and Allah, and that standing for an hour in the ranks of battle is better than standing in prayer for 60 years. Furthermore, Muhammad refutes the claim that the greater jihad is the inward spiritual struggle when he states that the best jihad is that of a man whose blood is shed and his horse is wounded. So yeah, the whole claim of the lesser jihad. So why would the author put that in there? Well, to try to whitewash the Sharia, of course. So you have to be very careful where they're trying to deceive you or trying to mislead you. For instance, Sunan ibn Majah. It was narrated that Amr ibn Abbas said, I came to the Prophet and said, O Messenger of Allah, which jihad is best? And he said, that of a man whose blood is shed and his horse is wounded. And again, a believer who strives in the path of God with self and his wealth. That is the most excellent of mankind. And what is the best deed is another, Sahih Bukhari. Believe in Allah, believe in Muhammad, and what is the next? To participate in religious war in Allah's cause. So yeah, and it goes on and on like this. So the whole claim of this, greater and lesser jihad is based on a apparently fabricated hadith. It has no real standing. But of course, it is also critically necessary that, because look at Hamas. Those are jihadist psychopaths. Those are literally people who've made themselves into psychopaths. Ibn Taymiyyah, right? He's a Sheikh al-Islam, and he's like the grandfather of jihad. He's the top scholar of jihad in Islam. There's a hadith related by a group of people which states that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said after the Battle of Tabuk, we have returned from jihad asghar, the lesser jihad, to jihad akbar, greater jihad. This hadith has no source. Nobody, whomsoever in the field of Islamic knowledge, has narrated it. Jihad against the disbelievers is the most noble of actions, and moreover, it is the most important action for the sake of mankind. So in other words, killing you in your land is the most important action that a Muslim can do for the sake of mankind. It's what the communists did, the Soviets, socialists, what Lenin and Stalin did. Killing you for the sake of better society, for a utopian world, is the most important thing they could do. That's why Mao killed 60+ million of his own people. That's why 130 million plus 200 million people died during the 20th century to make a utopian, better world. So yeah, during the Soviet era in the 20th century. And that's exactly what the Muslims are doing here. So jihad is Quranic. It is scriptural. So the scriptural basis, now we're back to the Sharia here. The scriptural basis for jihad prior to scholarly consensus defined in B7, is such Quranic verses as, and it tells us, hey, the Quran actually defines that jihad is fighting. It quotes here Quran 2:216. Fighting is prescribed for you. Option 2, it says, slay them wherever you find them. That's Quran 4:89. And number 3, it says, fight the idolaters utterly. That's total warfare. That's just fight without cease, fight without discrimination. Just kill them all. Quran 9:36. It tells us that the Quran is clearly the Sharia, the final source of understanding of Islam, the greatest source of understanding of Islam, written by Islam's infallible scholars, the Mujtahids Mutlaq, the absolute scholars, is telling us that these verses in the Quran instruct Muslims to go out and fight you, because that will bring a better world. And they speak of such hadiths as the one related by Bukhari and Muslim, that the Prophet said, I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there's no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And they will perform the prayer, and they will pay zakat. If they say it, they have saved their blood and their possessions from me. Yes, and the hadith reported by Muslim, to go forth in the morning or evening to fight in the path of Allah is better than the whole world and everything in it. So do we then take the word of no random Muslims in the comment section, or do we listen to the very greatest scholars in Islam to ever live and take their word for it? I think we know what the answer is. What is Pete Ross saying? Levrier, yes, they're killing us peacefully. Correct. We are being peacefully killed. Would anyone like to come up? You know what? I'm going to drop the link in the chat. If anyone has a question, I'll allow you to come up and ask live. My preference is that you will come on and show your face, and also please have good audio. If you don't have good audio, then we really can't, because it's a hassle. Okay, I've dropped the link in the chat there. And they're killing at least for good reasons, right? At least Islamic jihad, Islamic murder is for good reason. They're trying to make a better world. So at least there is that. So if anyone would like to come up, you can click on the link and I'll let you up and you can ask a question or so. Yeah. So when losing, the Muslims are oppressed. Yeah. Can you zoom that bigger? It's a little tough to zoom that bigger. I tell you what, I will. Hopefully that's a little better. Okay, let's see. So hopefully you can get a screenshot of that if you need it. Let's continue. Right, for those who are asking. Okay, now the Sharia, again, tells us details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet. Remember, the example of Muhammad, the Sunnah of Muhammad, is the example all Muslims must follow. Like him diddling a little girl, right? Him diddling a girl under the age of 10, right? That is the example, the perfect example. No Muslim can claim that Muhammad was wrong, that Muhammad committed moral errors, that Muhammad was less than perfect, because to do so is to commit the crime of Sab al-Rasul, that is insulting the Prophet, and you will die for that. That's what Salwan Momika died for, right? The Sharia crime of Sab al-Rasul. Yes, yeah, all of that. Yeah, this Iraqi law, it's a bit confusing out there, but yeah, they would just want to follow the Sunnah. Muhammad is the perfect example, the perfect man. So if Muhammad committed military actions on innocent civilians, then that's what Muslims must do. All right. Okay. As I said, I dropped the link in the chat if anyone wants to come up and ask a question. But so details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet. So he was a warmonger, including his own martial forays and those on which he dispatched others. So he sent people to go and conduct warfare. So jihad is a communal obligation. When enough people perform it to successfully accomplish it, it is no longer obligatory upon others. And he who provides the equipment for soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. So Muslims who are standing on the sidelines but are helping out with money and propaganda, like Bushra Sheikh and all that. They are themselves jihadis. You just don't quite realize that they are participating, because there are many ways to do jihad. According to scholarly writings, there's something like 13 or 14 different ways to do jihad. Now, Allah the Most High said himself, those of the believers who are unhurt but sit behind are not equal to those who fight in Allah's path with their property and who sacrifice their lives. So Muslims who are killed, who risk their lives to subjugate countries and people with jihad, those are of a much greater status. Those are recognized much more by Allah than those who sit at home on their sofas. Allah has preferred those who fight with their property and lives a whole degree above those who sit behind, and to each Allah has promised great good. Quran 495. Now I want to go to the source here. This is a link that I dropped in the very top. Now I dropped this link. This is my OneNote database link. Okay, this is it's the very second comment in the chat. You guys can have a look at that. Right, that will take you to this database that I have here. It's an online series of information. Well, it's an online OneNote page that you can find. And this is all about, it's got multiple topics from Islam to Judaism to the Crusades, as what I'm doing here. Now, for instance, the Crusades, right? Let me switch back to the Crusades and I'll get back to the Sharia. Now, the first Crusades began during the Middle Ages in the year 1095 as a result of a cry for help against invading Islamic armies, right? Now, the First Crusade happened 460 years after the first Christian city was overrun by Muslims. 457 years after Jerusalem was conquered by Muslims. The Crusade happened 453 years after Egypt was taken from Christendom by Muslims. Begotten, not created. My bot will delete comments with too many caps, so just don't use caps. And this is why you cannot allow Muslims to acquire nuclear weapons. Exactly, and that is true. Now, yes, yeah, it's like saying, well, Hitler at least had some positives. I mean, he was a vegetarian and he loved dogs, and so therefore we should look for the no. So 443 years after Muslim armies invaded and plundered Italy, 427 years after Muslim armies laid siege to Christendom's eastern capital of Constantinople, 380 years, after Spain was conquered by Muslim armies, 363 years after France was invaded by Muslim armies, 249 years after Rome was attacked by Muslim armies, twice for that matter, which is why the Vatican has that wall. We'll see it in a moment. So this is after 4 centuries of church burnings, killings, rape, and enslavement and forced conversions of Christians. So by the time the Crusades began, 3/4 of Christendom had been conquered and its people forced to convert or enslaved under Islam. So without the sacrifices and the very heroic defense of Europe made by Charles Martel, Battle of Tours, 732, the Templar Knights, 1129 to 1312, Alcid's Reconquista in 1085, the Venetian fleet at Lepanto, 1571, the Polish and Austrian knights at the gates of Vienna in 1683, and the Serbian Hajduks fighting off the Ottoman Turks in 1804, Europe would have been subjugated and converted to Islam like the Middle East and North Africa, which were once Christian territories. So the Crusades were a critically necessary defensive war to reclaim the Holy Land and to prevent Islamic expansion. It gave Europe time to regroup, strengthen itself, and fight off the Islamic invasion of Europe. So during this ongoing jihad that began in the 7th century, 3/4 of Christendom's original territory, that's all of North Africa, Egypt, Greater Syria, Anatolia, that's Asia Minor, Turkey, was permanently swallowed up by Islam, right? Let's have a look at another. So there was I'll skip this one. Let's have a look at the jihad timeline from 630, right? And this goes out to those dishonest people who occasionally call themselves Christians that defend Islam and the Crusades were very bad. The Crusaders were attacking those peaceful Muslims, and Christians must roll over and play dead.
And when Muslims attack, what you must do is you must just just bend over with your bum in the air and just say that Allahu Akbar, and the Muslims will leave you alone. It's like, okay, you do that. But yeah, let's have a look at what these Muslims are doing from 630 to 1095. In 630, right? Okay, this number is disputed, might be 10,000 men, whatever. Okay, but so this number, whatever. So Muhammad conquers Mecca. Then he dies in Medina. Islam controls the Hejaz. Then they conquer Syria, Palestine, Iraq. Muslim crusaders conquer Iraq. Then they annex Jerusalem from the Byzantines, and then they conquer Iran, except along the Caspian Sea. Then they go to Egypt again. They go to Syria, Palestine, North Africa. Then, of course, you find Islamic rule in Iran, Afghanistan, and India, and Pakistan, what they call today. Then, of course, they besiege Constantinople in the 670s, again, Jerusalem. Then, of course, they conquer Spain. Then, of course, and Portugal. Then they go into Europe. The conquest of Spain is complete in the 700s. Then they go into France in 732. Of course, they kicked out France again. The Franks under Charles Martel, the grandfather of Charlemagne, turns them back out of France. Then, of course, you have Baghdad, of course, and then you have Christophorus, a Muslim who converted to Christianity, is executed because that's what they do. Then, of course, you have this going on. Muslim Crusades capture Palermo, Italy. There are raids in southern Italy. Christians in the Holy Land are attacked. Then, of course, they conquer Sicily. They raid Corsica. Italy and France again. Of course, then there's the revolt of the black slaves in Iraq. Oh my gosh, Muslim slavery. Why don't anyone talk about that? Okay. Then, of course, you have Sicily and Sardinia. Then, of course, Cyprus and Tarsus. Then, of course, Church of the Resurrection is burned down by Muslims, and more churches in Jerusalem are attacked. Just like today, 200 churches burned in France last year. What was it? Right? So let's continue. And this goes on and on and on. And this is not even a complete list. Okay? So there are hundreds of battles before the Crusades even happen in 1095. So yeah, but we're supposed to go, wow, yeah, the Christians just came out of nowhere. Those violent Christians came out of nowhere. And for those Christians who are claiming the same, you are just a dhimmi. I'm sorry, but you lost your Christian card. You lost your truth card. You did gain a lying card and a collaborating with the enemy card, but yeah, you lost your Christian card. Sorry. Right. Please send the OneNote link again. Let me try and do this if I can. Here I am dropping the OneNote link. And there you go. There it is. There it is in the chat. I dropped it. It's the most recent comment. I'll drop it a few times. Okay, I'll drop it 3 times in a row so you guys can find it. Go to the OneNote link, and there's more. I mean, there's this one above here, right? That will tell you much more. I go into more detail on various of these pages. So this is the Vatican. Why do you think the Vatican has this wall? Because they wanted to stop ice cream salesmen from selling them lollipops? No, it's because Muslims, Islam is a problem. That's why. Okay, so let's have a look. This is a partial list. Okay, so you need to understand how violent the Islamic jihads were and why they are still doing it today. The Christian Crusades stopped in what, 1200s, 800 years ago? The Islamic jihad has never stopped. It will never stop. It must be stopped. So European nations and territories and others that were attacked and who came under Muslim occupation, sometimes for many centuries. Now, this is obviously not complete. I've been compiling this list and I never quite got around to finishing it. I agree with you, Protestant believer. Thank God for the Crusades. Yeah, the Crusaders were right. Well, I mean, the Pope doesn't raise armies and send them off to war, right? The Crusade was a big thing for the church to call, actually, weirdly enough. Why aren't your government saying it? Why are you saying the Pope has to do it? The Pope doesn't have an army. And for the liars who are going to say, well, the Pope has multiple divisions of Jesuits who are trained ninjas and all trained like 007. Bullshit. So, yeah, why is your government kowtowing to the Muslims? Why is your government not doing anything effective? How come your government is not able to stop little dinghies filled with men? Something wrong with their brains and their fingers, their hands? Small problem with their militaries? You know? RJ, not now. I have no idea. I honestly don't care, and it's just not relevant right now. J. Coleman Kate says the video of an Islamic saying we'll conquer Italy and make the Vatican a capital for Islam. Well, they've been saying that since 1683. And that's what they were saying they were going to do. They were going to stable their horses in St. Paul Cathedral. That's when they invaded Vienna. And let's see, yes. Thanks, man. Let's see. Yeah, we are all in this together, and this is happening whether we want it or not. No amount of wanting to make it go away. Look, you don't need to have an army. You don't need to have $1 billion. I don't. None of us do. But remember, Jesus changed the world with 11 people, right? It's simply people who had a belief, who had a will, so, and who spoke the truth. People who would not be silenced. That's what I need from you, right? One grain of sand doesn't do much. One drop of water doesn't do much, but a flood, a lot of drops of water can change the face of the earth, right? A lot of grains of sand can turn into a landslide, right? One grain of sand can start to grind the gears. A few more grains of sand, those gears start grinding. So really, just be a grain of sand, right? Invite a few other grains of sand to help you. There's a lot of us, there's few of them. Believe me, we can win this. We just have to speak the truth. Don't be silent, speak up, know the facts. Don't let them shame you. Don't let them silence you. Speak the truth, know the truth, learn the truth. I mean, they're lying to you. It's simple, just they're lying to you. And Islam is predicated on subjugating the world, and that is simply a fact. Yes, mass deportations probably is a good idea. Yeah, now, okay, Connotation al-Islam says they said they will take back Al-Andalus again. Well, because any land that has fallen under Muslim control is called waqf. It's an endowment. It's given to the Muslims as viceroys of that region by Allah. And it is always Islamic land, and they have to claim it back. So whatever land they once controlled is Muslim land in their eyes, and you have stolen that land, and they must get it back. So yeah, do understand that is how Islam works. And I'll cover more of the Sharia in a moment. Let's look at some of this history. So they invaded Albania, Armenia, Austria, Belarus, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria. Now, maybe some of these countries didn't exist exactly back then, but let's work with modern borders. Bulgaria, Crete, Cyprus, Denmark, France, Georgia, Greece, Hungary. I mean, how many Islamic countries did the Greeks invade in the 700s? Like 0. How many Islamic countries did the French invade in the 600s? Like 0. What were the Muslims doing in France in the 600s and 700s? Like, why? Think about it. What are they doing in Spain? What are they doing in Crete, in Italy, in Ireland of all places, in Iceland, in Israel, Italy, Lithuania, Macedonia, Malta, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Sicily, Spain, Ukraine? What were the Muslims doing invading everybody? They just invade everybody. Yeah. So honestly, again, here's this timeline, right? I mean, there's a lot of invading going on by Muslims. And then, of course, everyone's like, well, Islam is such a religion of peace, and it's like Christians are supposed to just be like totally like harmless, and we mustn't do anything, we must just roll over and play dead, and then we mustn't do anything. It's like, look, man, if you want to be weak, if you want to be a complete pussy, go ahead. You do that, but get out of my way. So, all right. Let me close that, but you guys have the link to this. So all of this info is in my OneNote webpage. Let's go back to the Sharia. I just use a different browser. If OneNote requires registration, it may need a Microsoft account. It shouldn't. You should just be able to go there, change your browser, see if that helps. Let me see. Thank you very much, Linear 86. It's powerful info you're equipping us with. Thank you. Yeah, well, let's just, all we can do is speak the truth, speak the facts. Yeah, let me see. What am I missing here? Yes, Serbia for 500 years was under Ottoman occupation. Exactly. And we don't like it. I mean, look, greater levels of Islamophobia will lead to lower levels of Islam. I recommend increasing levels of Islamophobia to 11. I think it's right about now around 3. It needs to be up by at least 11. So let's continue. Okay, let's see. So let me continue here. So if none of those concerned perform jihad, and it does not happen, then everyone who is aware that it is obligatory is guilty of sin. So jihad is personally obligatory for everyone able to perform it, male or female. That's the Sharia. Do we listen to rando Muslims who come on, rando Muslim 69 in the chat, or do we listen to the greatest scholars of Islam to ever live who left us with the Sharia? Yes, there's a great deal of similarity there, Christopher Pineda. So, male or female, right? Jihadis, male or female. Bushra Sheikh, anyone? Who is obliged to fight in jihad? Those called upon to perform jihad when it is a communal obligation are everybody who's able-bodied, right? Every able-bodied man who has reached puberty and is sane. So we have these occasional outbreaks in France, Germany, UK of mental illness, where a certain mentally ill religious individual will start shouting what the newspapers love to report as religious slogans, and then they go and plant thin pieces of metal in people's necks violently. And they say that was mental illness. Well, according to Islam, that's not mental illness. That's commitment. That's dedication. Because if you're mentally ill and you do things, Allah doesn't see it as valid. You have to make a conscious decision to go out and plant those little pieces of thin metal in people's necks. And so you have to be sane. So that, and that's why you must do the greater jihad, sorry. That's why you have to destroy your conscience, overcome your soul, and condition yourself like a psychopath to take the lives of other people. So, yeah. Yeah, they totally whitewashed in the UK press. Yeah. Airstrip 1 is, everybody's looking at Airstrip 1 these days and going, what the heck is going on Airstrip 1? Because, good grief. I don't know. Apocalypse Now, thank you for all the research you've done. Much appreciated. You're very welcome. I do it for you guys. I wanted to figure out this stuff for myself, and I know that it can help you. Don't be ashamed. Don't let them shame you. Don't let them shame you with lies. They have very clever lies, like the Toledo dimwit that came on earlier, right? Look, I apologize. I did not go to a school for apologetics. I didn't go to seminary. I worked in security, and yeah. So, and I also come from the third world. So yeah, I don't exactly have my first world card quite properly stamped and everything. Don't have all the credentials on my first world card. And seriously, asswipes who come along and say, well, who opened the gates of Toledo? What did the Muslims do in fucking Spain long before the gates of Toledo were opened? What promises did they make those Jews? Like, how stupid do you have to be? Honestly, fucking Christians, right? Making stupid claims. How do you call yourself a Christian when you are this easily deceived, lied to, and you lap it up like it's cat's milk? Honestly, you've lost your Christian card for being utterly stupid, easily lied to, easily deceived. Yeah, and Jesus was a Jew. Do you hate him too? Honestly, these things annoy me. I come on YouTube to talk about things that anger me. These are the things that genuinely anger me. Honestly. Yeah, Hitler admired Islam because it keeps people in a perpetual state of war. And yes, he believed it made them strong. And ridicule is a potent weapon, yes. And this is extremely true. Don't trust anyone just because they're here to be on your team. I have learned this the hard way. I've seen this over and over. So, at least subconsciously, I would agree. They're all aware. This is why, look, again, Muslims, you cowards, you. I have invited hundreds of Muslims in the comment section like this on YouTube. Let us do a live public discussion showing the Sharia on a public live stream, and you with your big mouth and your incredible knowledge of Islam, let's just discuss what it says in the Sharia versus the things that you claim about Islam and the things that common Islamic apologists claim about Islam. But for some reason, despite 4 years of making requests and hundreds at least of these open requests to Muslims to come and have that chat, public live discussion, let's compare your claims and your apologist claims with what the scholars write in the Sharia, because You want Sharia for the UK, Sharia for Britain, Sharia for the US, Sharia for France. Sharia is the perfect law. If the Sharia law is so freaking perfect, if it's so much better than anything in Judaism, anything in the Bible, anything in Christianity, anything in the West, why are you ashamed and embarrassed and clearly humiliated that you will not have a public live discussion of what's in the Sharia? Because you know, and I'll say it bluntly, the Sharia is filth. It is violent, depraved, immoral, sexually depraved filth. And we can prove that. And I have proven this over and over. But Muslims know exactly what's in it, and that's why they don't want to have that discussion with me. Because they know that the Sharia will prove how violent and depraved Islam actually is. Your Lachman says you're more knowledgeable than I would say 95% of apologists. I appreciate that. But also because I speak so freely, I'm not very popular with a lot of apologists because I'm not really an apologist. I come from a security background, and yeah, I'm more interested in winning because look, here's the policy. Here's the policy that we need to follow with Islam. We win, they lose. That simple. It's that simple. Really, that's all it takes. Our policy, Western policy, Christian policy against Islam is that we win, they lose. Period. No more needs to be said. We win. That's it. Yes, yes, yes. Stone Age behavior. Yes, it's an excuse for Stone Age behavior. Yes, you have to read it in context. There's no getting away from this vile pull. Yeah, it's pretty blatant. It's blunt. Okay, let's continue with the Sharia. It is offensive to conduct. Now remember, anything that they say that sounds good, the next sentence, they're going to contradict it, or they're just going to completely. In fact, the Sharia will contradict itself in the very next sentence. It's pretty how Islam is. But okay, it is offensive to conduct a military expedition against hostile non-Muslims without the caliph's permission. Although, if there is no caliph, you don't need permission. So now, Muslims will tell you, well, jihad can only be conducted if there is a caliph. Well, here's a weird thing. Show me where the caliph is. No caliph? Well, then you don't need permission. You can just go ahead. So, yeah, thanks for lying to us, Muslims. And of course, I have covered this before on the channel. Lying is obligatory in Islam. It is obligatory for Muslims to lie to you into a conversation with one. Right. So, yes. A pregnancy can last 4 years. And I wonder why that is, because either there's stupidity going on or someone's been saying dumb things in Islam and they want to cover it up. Support from the Philippines. Welcome, James Mark. Thank you very much, Lydia. Lloyd reminds me of Sam, how he multitasks by teaching and reading everything in the chat at the same time. Yeah, I'm trying to have a conversation. I mean, look, I gave you guys the link. If someone wants to come up and join the fun here, you are welcome. And Thunderous, hey, man, the link's somewhere. I can drop it again. The link is somewhere if you want to come up and have this conversation with me, buddy. Come on up. Oh, by the way, my trips have been postponed. I'm supposed to. Well, yeah, this month we might meet up for that beer. So that's what's supposed to happen. Yeah, debates are not intellectual pursuits of knowledge in Islam. Debate is a system called adab al-jadal, right? It's a method of very clever sophistry. It's a method of convincing others, of using very clever language techniques to win an argument, not to find truth. This is why it's futile to actually have debates with Muslims. That's why, look, Joe Rogan is the biggest podcast in the world. Right? Lots of huge podcasts exist now that are just conversational. I invite people to have conversation, right? All we want to do is say, hey, look, this is what's in the Sharia. What do you think, Mr. Muslim? And then suddenly there's Muslims who are disagreeing with me left and right in the chat, like, well, I'm not an expert and I'd rather you go talk to bye-bye, and then they run off. So Thunderous, I dropped the link in the chat. You're welcome to come up and we can talk more about this. Yes, Thunderous, you're a very popular man. You're a very popular man, so do hop on, Thunderous. Please join us. I'll drop the link in the chat again. There you go. That's the studio link right there. I hope my audio is better. I try to fix my audio situation until I buy more furniture in this room. I have a problem mounting my mic, and I need cabinets, and
this room is, of course, we see that. Yeah, we see exactly that. They're extremely dishonest. I mean, there's some PhD scholars that I've, there was. Yeah, let me not talk about that. That's a different story. Thanks. The audio is good. Good to hear. Great to hear it. Audio is good. Thanks, guys. Yeah. So Thunder has come up. So okay. Now, so if there's no caliph, they can just go out and kill you. Great, because no permissions required. So if there's no caliph, then truces are permissible but not obligatory. The only one who may effect a truce is the Muslim ruler of a region or his representative. But if there's no Muslim ruler, no caliph, then who does? Well, the imam, right? And if there's no imam, well, then the individual lone Muslim, right? The authority and responsibility just devolves down to the lowest unit, right? So it is a matter of the greatest consequence, right? Making truces, making peace with non-Muslims is incredibly consequential in Islam because it entailed the non-performance of jihad. So Muslims have to think very carefully about making peace. That's why jihad, that's why Hamas and all these groups are so violent, right? Are so intent on not making peace because it means the non-performance of jihad, which is a crime. And if they don't do this, Allah will send all Muslims to hell. So understand, if they don't perform jihad, there are major consequences for the ummah. Yeah, no Muslim is so smart to be so proud debating about Sharia. I've never wanted to invite a Muslim for a debate, and I need to encourage you to listen to the words that I'm saying. I never once used debate, I never once offered debate, and I absolutely, positively need you to understand that Muslim debate is a very well-practiced, 1,000-plus-year-old method of lying. You need to be extremely careful. These people know exactly what they are doing. That's why I invite them for conversations. If you want to play their game their way and keep losing, go ahead. So let's continue. Now, if the Muslims are weak, a truce may be made for 10 years if necessary, right? Because the Prophet made peace with Quraysh for 10 years. But as related by Abu Dawud, right? So we know that that hadith collection is valid because it's in the Sharia, it's quoted. It is not permissible to stipulate longer than that, except by means of a new truce, each of which does not exceed 10 years. But of course, the Muslims can cancel that truce, that treaty at any second. All right. So, yes, it can be violated, exactly. These treaties can be violated at any time. Oops, I see I made a wrong mistake here again. So let me fix that. So there must be some interest served in making a truce other than preservation of the status quo. So if nothing's going to change, don't make a truce. Right? So what is the interest? So understand this is Muslim, what's the word? These are their operational tactics. This is their threat doctrine. So do not be faint-hearted, they remind us, and call for peace when it is you who are the uppermost. So when you have the advantage, don't call for peace, make war. So treaty is only a pause while Islam gets stronger. Exactly. Yeah. So again, please, if you do like this, talk to your friends about it. I know my style may not appeal to everyone, and I might be too blunt for some who are weak and who don't like directness and bluntness, but these are the facts. And if those people who disagree with my methods want to come and discuss with me about how they know better or how I am wrong, or how they know Sharia better than I do, they're welcome to do so and explain to me how we should, I don't know, bend over and then just take it up the bum or something. That's great. Okay, so let's continue. Right, Islamic scholars and a sanitized sirah. Yeah, the idea of debate is different, right? Exactly. Okay, so yeah, the Prophet, but he's the perfect example. What a dumb deen. The Prophet made a 10-year truce, so all truces must be 10 years. And of course, at its finest. Yes, but Muhammad is the perfect example. That's why the little PDF file, no Muslim can say he was wrong. They can't call it a crime. So very welcome, Iron Warrior, and who we have the pleasure of speaking with.
Hello, Sam. Hello, Lloyd. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have a question. you in a couple of your older videos, you mentioned that Islam is a deen. Do any of the
Yes.
normal Muslims actually know this? That excuse me, there is an actual deen, not a religion.
So religion is a Western term. Remember, that's a Christian term. They will use terms that we are familiar with to disguise themselves, to hide themselves, to camouflage what they are. It's so some Muslims do, certainly. Many Muslims have an idea. I mean, look, you see Muslims commonly say it's a system, a complete way of life, meaning it's a complete system of social, political, moral, and other control. So they have some kind of idea, if not necessarily a specific idea. But that said, once you challenge them, they obviously are going to deny this. So you don't know if they're being dishonest, if they're being truthful, how much they actually know. Generally, they do not have specifics. They have but a rough idea that is, I think, inculcated to them as children. So they realize that Islam covers everything, whereas religion in Western world is a spiritual pursuit and a moral pursuit, not necessarily fully something that is like civil law. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But also that will explain Sharia law then.
To some degree, yeah. As SDRC says, it's the same vocabulary, a different dictionary, and that's something that James Lindsay says. The same vocabulary, but a different dictionary. So how do you mean that explains Sharia law?
Well, it's a political legal system, not a religion.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that's why they need a Sharia law.
Yes, religion is optional. Within the definition of deen, religion is optional. I've covered it before on the channel. I mean, I could go to it right now, but it's optional. Religion is not a critical aspect of it. Let me just go find it, actually, and just bring it up quickly. Because I had it on my channel recently as on X. I'm not going to go into the... Well, let me just go here. We'll just find these references. Deen. Oh, good grief. What did I do with those? It was somewhere else. Okay, let me find. Should I bring up those references, or do you have any? Can we do it without that? Because I just don't want to
I
get.
can do it without. I already saw him. I already saw it.
Okay.
I want to ask you something else. Do you think that when October Revolution happened in Russian in 1917, when Soviet Union was established, do you think when they persecuted the church, the Orthodox Christian Church, they only persecuted Christians and left Islam alone? And after 1950s, 60s, Islam grew in popularity inside the Soviet Union than Christianity.
I wasn't aware of that. Wasn't familiar with that. I mean, Stalin, but that was back in the 40s and 50s, from the 30s onwards. I know Stalin wiped out most of the Orthodox churches ultimately. They were antithetical to ideologies that were against the socialism of Lenin and Stalin. But I'm not familiar with what happened with the Muslims. That's news to me, so I need to look into that some more. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, listen, my background is I'm currently a student of history in my local university, and I explored it a little bit. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to say a couple of things so that you can hear it, and our viewers in this video can also hear it. I think that after 1917, up to the end of Second World War in 1945, and then after Stalin died in 1954, the Orthodox Christian Church that has helped Russians since the Kievan Rus era, that after they battled so many Muslim invasions and they recaptured so much territory, and so much territory has been lost by the Islamic invasions, were reconquered through socialism, through communism, on the Islamic side. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Not really, not quite, because it's also new to me, so I need more time. But I'm not following right now.
Understood.
But something, I mean, something I'd need to go and learn more about. Definitely something to go and analyze and try and see how that fits in. Because there are definitely parallels with Islamic thought and socialist thought of Lenin and Stalin. You'll find that a lot of the elements of the Sharia are present within communist thought. It's crazy how it aligns so well with the Sharia, how Marx's ideas, Lenin's ideas, Engels' ideas, all of these align with the Sharia in many ways. It's like it's taking the ideas of the Sharia without claiming that they are such, but it's applying ideas from the Sharia. I don't know if that answers or adds anything.
Yes, it does. It does absolutely. But that's why in the 90s there was a war in Chechnya when Russian Federation was formed.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that CIA actually supported that rebellion inside Chechnya.
Yeah, I'm sure the CIA have been a lot of places. I mean, it's hardly a surprise.
Yeah, that is all I wanted to ask.
Okay. Yeah. I'm also gonna wonder where did Thunderous go? Yeah, I did mention it. So yeah, that's it. Anything else?
No, that will be all. I want to ask you one more thing before I go. Do you still update your archive? Do you still add more books, or that's it?
I haven't added anything new. My personal archive I've been adding to, but to be honest, I haven't added recently to the archive online. I should actually do that. So yeah, good thing you remind me. I need to just make sure I transfer all my newest content over.
Okay, thank you very much, man. God bless. Thank you.
No, thank you. Take care. I'm Warrior. Bye. Yeah. Okay, guys. So let's see. This one's only. I could continue this in a couple of days, but let me add a little bit more to this. So now, teachings of Judaism and Christianity about war. So let's see from the life of Muhammad, one of the Sirah documents. They speak of the teachings of Moses is far from our conceptions of justice and fair play. And you cannot act upon that teaching today. The teachings of Jesus is impractical and has always been impractical. Never in their history have Christians tried to put his teachings into practice. Crazy stuff. Only the teachings of Islam are practical, one which has been both preached and practiced by its exponents, and the practice of which can create and maintain peace in the world. Fascinating stuff. Thanks very much. Yeah, incredible stuff. So now you know Muslims are teaching Muslims this kind of stuff. Kind of abject nonsense. Right, let's continue. So they speak of, though, the practical verdict of the Christian peoples, therefore, is that war is the real teaching of the New Testament. See, the New Testament teaches war. Because now they've got to demonize you because they've got to somehow justify they've got to claim that they are peaceful, right? That Islam doesn't teach violence, which we all know is false. But no, the New Testament teaches violence. And that turning the other cheek was either an opportunistic teaching dictated by the helplessness of early Christians. So hold on, the early Christians were violent warmongers who were helpless. Helpless, violent warmonger. Okay, fine, retard. So the practical verdict is that the New Testament teaches war. So how many divisions did Jesus lead into battle? Roughly 0. How many raids and wars did Muhammad lead? Roughly 100. How many people did Muhammad have killed? Hundreds, thousands, millions? Yeah, how many battles Aisha got into a battle and 10,000 people died, the Battle of the Camel or whatever, the apostasy wars after Muhammad died, etc. So yeah. Jesus, how many people did Jesus kill or order assassinated? Like 0. Where's the man getting this? Out of his ass. That's Islam. They are the biggest liars. Yes, they project their bloodthirst. Yes, they are the biggest liars. They project their bloodthirst onto Christianity. That is the truth. And let's see, the Quran on war and peace. Islam does not teach aggression as did Moses, because Moses taught aggression. Oh, yeah. Nor does it, like present day and presumably corrupt Christianity, preach a contradiction. It does not ask us to turn the other cheek and at the same time to sell our clothes to buy a sword. And the teachings of Islam fits into the natural instincts of man, to diddle 5-year-olds. And it promotes peace in the only possible way. Peace through shooting first, shooting them in the back. That's what Islam does. Islam forbids aggression, but it urges us to fight. If failure to fight jeopardizes peace, well, we won't have peace. The only way to have peace is to have Islam rule the world. And if we don't fight, we're jeopardizing peace. So it's going to attack everybody. Easy logic. And it promotes war. It urges us to fight. If failure to fight jeopardizes peace and promotes war. So if we failing to fight will promote war, then we should go to war. If failure to fight means the destruction of free belief and of the search of truth, it is our duty to fight. So if the failure to fight means that people will eliminate Islam, which is the free belief and search of truth, right, then we have to fight. So if Lloyd and all these other guys are going to oppose Islam, and if governments are going to prevent Islam being spread in the world, then Muslims have to fight. And that's in the Sharia too, believe it or not. So Waldy has donated £10 through Super Chat. Thank you very much. And he says, thanks, Lloyd, for exposing this cult, which recently killed Salwan, who wasn't afraid to die to expose this cult. Yes, I'm just waiting for the comment to come through so I can see it. It hasn't come through on the chat here yet. Let me just find, let's hope it comes through in a moment. It hasn't come through yet. Let me just find it. Give me 1 second. I'd like to read the whole chat. For some reason, your comment has disappeared. There we go. Thank you. So let me just grab it and put it up. Here we are. So he says, thank you very much. Thanks, Lloyd, for exposing this cult, which recently killed someone who wasn't afraid to expose this cult. Be careful. I'm wishing you to have a debate with David Wood to expose this cult. I'm not big on debates, to be honest, and I've really explained why. David Wood wants to speak to me, but David Wood doesn't accept any of the modern teachings, like the stuff that Jay Smith came up with, and Mal and myself and others discussing. He's much into the standard narrative, and so he's kind of stubborn about things like that. He doesn't buy into any of the other theories based on evidence that have recently been exposed. And David knows, very few people know the Sharia like I do. I haven't met anyone, literally one person who does. The only people are Paul, good grief. Paul Sutcliffe is the only other person I know that has studied the Sharia to an extent, and Adam Seeker. Those are the only two guys I know that know the Sharia fairly well, besides myself. And so I don't know what I would debate with him, but if he wants to have a discussion, I'd be happy to have a discussion with him. I can prove it from the texts. I don't have to make anything up. I can show it from the texts themselves. So now in the objectives of jihad, the caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians. The caliph makes war. That's the objective of jihad, of obligatory jihad. If there is no caliph, then who does it? The imam does it. If there's no imam, well, then the individual Muslim does it. So, provided he has first invited them to enter Islam, so he has called them to Islam, and then he can make war upon them. Except when he doesn't call them to Islam, he can do it anyway, because, well, sometimes you just don't have the time to call people, so you just make war anyway, right? Because anything that they say in Islam, any rule that they provide, well, they can break that rule and do something completely opposite, right? And if they will not, then they must invite them to enter the social order of Islam by paying the jizya. So in other words, you must become a prisoner of war. You have to pay tax. You're a slave. You're a slave to Islam. You pay the jizya, right? You become a dhimmi. So either you submit and you enter Islam as a Muslim, or you, and then of course, but if you don't, the war continues until they become Muslim. It doesn't say that if they fight you first, you attack them. It says, no, you fight them until they become Muslims. That's what the Quran teaches. That's what the Hadiths teach. That's what the Sunnah teaches. Or else they pay the non-Muslim poll tax in accordance with the word of Allah. Fight those who do not believe in Allah. There's no qualification there. It says, well, if they attack you first. No, it says, no, just if they don't believe in Allah, fight them. right? And fight them until they pay the poll tax out of hand and are humbled. Of course, when you read the Sharia, it's not just humble, it's humiliated. It is debased. It is brought low. So they refer to Quran 9:29. Yes, there are imams online that say exactly what Lord Young is teaching. Yes, you can see it online anytime. Let me see. Yeah, Raymond Ibrahim. I mean, I'm happy to talk to him. So let me see. Let me see. So yeah, so Protestant belief says, I met David Wood. He's very tunnel visioned. I've heard the same from others. I've heard the very same. So let me see. Okay, let me continue. So let's go on. Now, this is Jamia Tirmidhi, right? And they speak of the chapters on military expeditions. And they say, right, in normal conditions, when Muslims are in power and they are not living as a minority, and they are not under any compulsion or subjugation, it is an order for Muslims that they should not give such leeway to the non-Muslims. They should not greet them first, nor yield the way for them. In other words, when they walk, everyone else must get out of their way. Everyone else needs to step aside for the Muslims. They need to be humbled in front of the Muslims, right? So some of the people of knowledge, the imams, the ulama, said that it only means that it is disliked because it would amount to honoring them, and they don't honor the non-Muslims. You cannot respect the non-Muslims. Once Muslims are in power, they must not respect non-Muslims. The UK is a prime example of that. And the Muslims were only to humiliate them. The Muslims are only to humiliate the non-Muslims. Where does it teach in the Quran? Anywhere in the Sirah, anywhere in these Muslim sources, that Allah loves the non-Muslim? Where does it teach that Muslims are to love the non-Muslim? Nowhere. They are taught to hate you, to humiliate you. You see, because if they, for this reason, when one of them is met, one of them being you, the non-Muslim, is met on the path, a Muslim is not to yield for him, because doing so would amount to honoring them. They're not to respect you. They're not to give you respect. So, now, of course, they need to tell you to convert to Islam, and if you refuse, then take the jizya from them. And if they refuse to pay the jizya, give me your money. And if you don't give them money, they are to seek aid from Allah and fight you. That's what they mean, seek aid from Allah against them. In other words, yeah, pay me money or else. And then if you don't pay them money, they will make war on you. Right. So let's see. Let's continue. Right. So let's look at the Al-Hidayah. So I think I'll end here for the time being. I'll end on this page. I'm roughly halfway through this presentation. And hopefully you've learned something about the Crusades and the reason for the Crusades, as well as the motivation in Islam for going out and doing what it's doing even today. Because the Sharia is for all time, it's eternal. Okay, so, and the apostle said, fight in the name of Allah and in the path of Allah, i.e. truth. Sure. Combat only those who disbelieve in Allah. Now, the Hidayah is the major Sharia law text for the Hanafi school. Now, of course, a Muslim's going to say, well, I'm not a Hanafi, I'm a Hanbali, therefore this does not apply to me. That's not true. The Bible applies to all Christians, no matter which denomination. So you can't say, well, that's a Lutheran Bible. I'm an Episcopalian, and I've got a different Bible, so that Bible doesn't apply to me, though. It's like a totally different Bible, so it's like a different religion completely. You know, it's like they believe in Jesus, and my Bible we don't have Jesus. You know, it's like a different thing. Nonsense, right? The simple thing is that 85%, 80% of the teachings in these schools are identical. The difference is in Rukhsat Azima, that's the strictness, how much dispensation they give, leeway they give for interpretation, in the sense of, for instance, apostasy, all of them say we kill you, right? There's no discrepancy about that. There's no confusion about that in all four schools. The difference is, do you kill them now or do you wait 3 days? Do you burn them or do you drown them? Do you stone them to death or do you choke them to death? Do you chop off the head or do you throw them off a building? Those are the differences that you know. So yeah, things like that. But the rest of it, these are not things that affect doctrine in any fundamental way. They don't differ in any way that affects fundamental doctrine. But yeah, I think it's so. This is the largest school of Muslims. This is the main group of Muslims, and of course, so therefore, this is what the largest majority of Muslims are learning directly as Muslims who follow the Hanafi school. So let's look at the rules of warfare in the Hidayah. Now, it's odd that a religious text, a religious theocratic text, the religious law has rules of warfare. But okay, so we're in the New Testament. Going back to the fool that was writing the Sirah manual about the New Testament is all about warfare. Show me the chapter of warfare in the Gospels. Where in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, or I know. He's gonna go, Lloyd. He's gonna Sabanu la blah blah blah. He says, Lloyd, we know that the gospel, the New Testament is violence because you've got the book of Acts. And it's the most violent book in the Bible, the book of Acts. And in the book of Acts, you teach how to axe people. And that's probably the best argument they've got to claim that the New Testament is violent and teaches warfare. So yeah, just wait for that argument. You heard it here first. Yeah, Luke 19:27, but then go back to Luke 19:19, and it's a parable he's telling, right? It's a story he's telling. It's an example, right? So yeah, that's because Shaitan is pissing in their ears at night. That's gonna, all that accumulation of pee in your brain is probably causing problems for them. Okay, let's see. Reminder to update the archive books. Yes. Okay, so let me see. Okay, let me finish this page. Yeah, you didn't read the gospel where Jesus preached war and killing the infidels? No, I didn't. I skipped Sunday school that day. That was the book of Acts, right? Where they teach how to make your axe and how to axe people. Must be that. That's the only book I can think of. Okay, so when the Muslims commence battle and they have surrounded a city or a fort, they are to invite the inhabitants to accept Islam. The Prophet did not commence combat with the people without first inviting them to Islam. If they responded positively, then don't fight them. Refrain from fighting them due to the attainment of the purpose. So the purpose of the fighting of Muslims is to make you into a Muslim, is to force you through fear of death to become a Muslim. If they refuse, invite them to pay the jizya. Right-e-o. And this applies to those among them who are eligible to accept the payment of jizya. Those from whom jizya is not acceptable, like the apostate or the idol worshippers from among the Arabs, there's no benefit inviting them in to accept jizya, because only Islam is acceptable from them. Allah the Exalted has said, then shall ye fight, or they shall submit. So yeah, it goes on. The reason is that through the invitation, they come to know that we engage them in battle on account of our deen. Now, the question I heard earlier from the guest who came up, the word deen is used commonly across a lot of these Islamic texts. They call it a deen. So Muslims know it's a deen. They know it's not a religion. They're well aware of that, but they camouflage their terms by using the terms we know. And so we attach our connotations to them and fail to attach their connotations. So the reason that Muslims fight you is to make you become a Muslim. So they fight you because you're not a Muslim. It's not because you did anything wrong. Well, actually, you did. You weren't a Muslim. So because you're not a Muslim, they are obligated to fight you no matter what country you're in. They have to go find you and make war on you. So, not for stealing your wealth or the enslavement of your families. They're going to do that, though. They will do that. I guarantee they will enslave your families and they will steal your wealth. But they're really doing it because their deen tells them. See? So perhaps they will respond positively so that the burden of battle is avoided. If the commander engages them in battle before communicating the invitation. So what happens if they fight you before they invite you to Islam? Well, then you commit a sin. Nevertheless, there is no penalty. So yeah, it was wrong of you to not invite them and just go over there and kill them, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. So, due to the absence of there being protection, because you're not a Muslim, you don't have any legal protection. It's like, well, damn it, you should have been a Muslim, otherwise we wouldn't have come over here and kill you, you non-Muslim, you dead non-Muslim, you. So, and this arises from deen, or their being in the Dar al-Islam, the house. They're not in the Dar al-Islam, they're not in the house of Islam. Thus, it becomes like the killing of women and children. It's okay. See, Muslims want to tell you, and we'll discuss this in the Sharia, it's very blunt, Muslims say in Islam we have rules of war. We don't cut down trees and we don't kill women and children, except that, yes, you do cut down trees and you can murder women and children without blinking an eye. It's in the Sharia. It says here, this is one example. There are others. Thus it becomes like the killing of women and children. Yeah, go ahead and kill them. It's fine. I mean, we need babies. What are babies going to do for us? Right? And if they reject the invitation, then seek the help of Allah and engage them in combat. I thought jihad was to eat more salads or to watch less TV and I don't know, pull more weeds out of the garden. But apparently it says engage people in combat. So yeah. And then, of course, the reason is that Allah helps his friends and destroys his enemies. So yeah, I think I'll pause here for the evening. Hopefully you have learned something. And what have you guys learned from this? No, Allah could not tell him. Think about it. Think about it well. Muhammad violated the entire 10 Commandments. Islam is a violation of the 10 Commandments. They violated the Code of Moses. They violated everything that we consider moral, decent, and holy. Islam is an inversion of everything. It's a way of thumbing your nose at God. Remember, Jesus does say, "Suffer little children to come unto me." And he says, it is better for those who harm these children to have a millstone tied around their neck and tossed into the ocean than for them to harm a child, right? So Islam does this because it's their way of giving God the finger. It's that simple. It's their way of saying, well, we don't care about you, God. What are you going to do? We're going to diddle kids, right? Because that is, according to Jesus, the most horrendous, the most heinous of crimes for which you will be punished. And this is what Muhammad did, as thumbing his nose, giving God the bird, flipping him the bird. It's that simple. It's their way of showing we're greater than God. We're greater than the God of the Bible. We're greater than Jesus. We're greater than Yahweh. It's as simple as that. This is what they are, Gnostics. These are Satanists. These are anti-Christian. These are enemies of the God of the Bible, of the morality of the Bible. It's that simple. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, because it was a bad Quran, right? Because the Quran was corrupt and you had to burn it. Who knows? You know what? We need an international Quran burning day. We need to do this because, seriously, they can't kill us all. Simple as that. Just to make an international Quran burning day, make it the day that Salwan Momika was murdered. And on that day, we just burn Qurans. Seriously. And what are they going to do? Right? Just publish cartoons of Momo. I do it all the time. It's simple. What they're going to do. So, yeah. Let me see. 7th century thinking. Yeah. Yeah. Who is a liar? But he that does not say that Jesus is the Christ. Yep. Okay. So let me see. Oh, they found a Heineken beer bottle at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Interesting. Yeah, Gnosticism is the inversion of the Old Testament. Yeah, it's just whack job religion for crazy people. Yep, so guys, have I missed anything? And Lloyd, jy en Christian Prince sal 'n fenomenale span maak. Wel, vertel hom, ek is hier. Jy weet, ek sal graag met hom praat. Ek sal graag met hom uitsaai, laat hom weet ek is hier, ek wag. Ja, sê vir hom ek het gesê, jou vader wag. Ek sal jou kry. Van jou sal net 'n bloedkool bly op my kamermuur. Yeah. So yeah, but let him know. I'm happy to have that conversation with him. So yeah, guys, I'll call it a night here. Muhammad is an antichrist, certainly. But thank you very much, Lara. Dis baie goed van jou om dit te sê. Baie dankie. And ek bly om dit te hoor. Dude for Christ says I've learned that I should watch and share more of your videos. Thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful for that. So guys, if there are no more final questions, I'll call it a night here. Maak so, nee, ons maak so. Ons maak 'n plan. Jy weet, ons gaan nou braai. Ons gaan nou braai. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how it is. So guys, yeah, that was me speaking some Afrikaans with a fellow Safar. So guys, thank you very much for the time you spent here. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you understand. The Crusades were necessary. Islam is evil. Islam is violent. And Islam is not going to stop. It is part of its fabric that it must continue. It will not stop. We must stop it. It's that simple, right? And what did I say earlier? There was something that I mentioned earlier. If I can just remember what it was that I said. There was a point I was making earlier, but not about the grains of sand, but there was another point that I raised, and I cannot recall what it was I said. But really, just speak the truth, right? Don't let them embarrass you. McKieran, just subscribe. Thank you very much. So speak the truth. We can defeat the lie. Just speak the truth. We will beat the lie. It's that simple. These are the people of the lie, right? You have the truth on your side, and God is truth. God wants us to speak truth, and we can know truth from facts, from logic, because God is logos, which means he is both truth and also there's an intellectual component. So use your intellect, use your God-given intellect, use the facts, and don't let them shame you into silence. So I would say so, yes. Yes, and at some point, citizens may well rise up if they aren't allowed. So guys, thank you very much. Good night, and God bless. And I will see you tomorrow. I'll be on with Elaine Ellinger. We've been talking about stealth jihad in the workplace. Muslims are invading government agencies as well as corporate, well, invading into the corporate space. So we'll discuss that tomorrow. Take care, night, guys. Good night. God bless.